The cold expanse of space stretched endlessly before the crew of the research ship Aurora. Stars flickered like distant lanterns against the black void, each one a promise of something unknown. Captain Aaron stood at the bridge, eyes fixed on the display that showed the outer rim sector. Their mission was supposed to be simple: survey uncharted star systems and record anomalies. But the moment the SOS signal hit their receivers, simplicity vanished. The signal was weak, fragmented, but unmistakable. Someone alive, was calling for help from a planet far beyond the usual trade routes. Aaron's heart tightened. Space was dangerous enough without strangers in trouble, yet something about the message demanded attention. "We can't ignore it," he said aloud, more to himself than to the crew. There could be lives at stake. Lieutenant Kara, the ship's communications officer, adjusted the signal filters. "Captain, it's coming from planet Virilia 9. Atmospheric readings show high turbulence and toxic gases. It's not exactly hospitable." Aaron nodded. "I know, prepare the landing shuttle." "We're going down there." The crew moved quickly, each person focused yet tense. Pilots calibrated the shuttle for a descent through the planet's thick clouds. Engineers double-checked life support and shielding systems. Even in the quiet hum of the Aurora, the weight of what lay ahead pressed on everyone's shoulders. As the shuttle pierced the upper layers of the atmosphere, turbulence rattled the cabin. Storms raged like angry beasts across the surface. Lightning split the thick clouds, illuminating jagged cliffs and rivers of molten rock. Kara gripped the armrest, her knuckles white, but she didn't speak. Words were useless against the raw fury of a planet that wanted to remind them it was dangerous. After what felt like hours, though it had been only minutes, the shuttle broke through the storm. The landscape that spread below was almost otherworldly. Towering spires of black rock jutted like teeth from the ground. Rivers of glowing liquid snaked through deep canyons. Acidic fog hovered over swamps where strange, enormous creatures moved just out of sight. The SOS coordinates led them to a small plateau, partially surrounded by jagged cliffs. Smoke rose in thin spirals from unknown fires, and every instinct told the crew that they were stepping into a place where survival was not guaranteed. The shuttle landed with a shudder, sending dust and small rocks skittering across the plateau. The engines powered down, leaving the crew in an eerie silence. Captain Aaron exhaled slowly, trying to calm the tight knot of anxiety in his stomach. "Stay sharp," he said. "We don't know what or who we're dealing with here." They stepped onto the rocky surface, their boots crunching on the gravel. The air was thick with a chemical tang, and their masks filtered out most of the toxins, but the sense of danger was immediate. Kara scanned the area with a portable sensor. "Life signs are faint but multiple," she said. "Someone or something is here, but it's spread out. Could be traps. Keep your weapons ready, but no firing unless necessary," Aaron instructed. "We're here to rescue, not start a fight." Moving cautiously, the team followed the signal deeper into the plateau. As they approached the coordinates, the source of the SOS finally appeared. It was a small shelter, half buried in the rocks and dust. Its walls were scorched and dented, clearly battered by storms or some kind of attack. From within, a figure emerged, slim, covered in protective layers and moving with careful precision. "Over here," the figure shouted, waving a hand. The crew relaxed slightly. At least one human was alive. As they drew closer, they could see her face, smudged with dirt and fatigue, eyes sharp and wary. She introduced herself as Jara. Her voice carried relief but also caution. "You came. I wasn't sure anyone would." Captain Aaron extended a hand. "We got your signal." "Are you alone?" Jara shook her head. "Yes, mostly. There are others. But not like me. The people here, they're not like you." "You shouldn't have come," Aaron frowned. "What do you mean?" Jara's eyes darkened. "This planet, it made people strong but cruel. They survive because they can endure anything. They don't welcome strangers. If you're not careful, you won't survive long." The warning sent a shiver through the crew. They had faced dangerous planets before, but there was something different here. These were humans like them. Yet something about Jara's description made their blood run cold. Kara whispered, "Captain, sensors are picking up movement." "Not all of it is wildlife." Aaron gestured for silence. The crew crouched, scanning the rocky terrain. Shadows moved between the jagged spires, fast, purposeful, and deliberate. Their shapes were vaguely human, but their movements were sharper, faster, more precise than any ordinary human could manage. The first glimpse of the Deathworlders was enough to make the crew realize the true challenge of this mission. Jara led them cautiously to her shelter. She explained that she had been part of a small research team sent years ago, but an unexpected storm destroyed their communication arrays, leaving them isolated. Over time, the settlers adapted, or tried to adapt, to the harsh environment. Some didn't survive. Others changed, genetically and physically, to endure the extreme conditions. The Deathworlders were the result. Humans pushed to their absolute limits by a planet that demanded survival above all else. As night fell, the plateau transformed into a landscape of shadows and whispers. The storms above rumbled like distant drums echoing against the cliffs. The crew huddled around a small fire Jara had managed to keep alive, the warmth a small comfort against the chill of fear. They shared rations and exchanged wary glances. None of them spoke much. Every sound could betray them to unseen eyes. "Why didn't you leave when you could?" Lieutenant Halen asked Jara quietly. Jara's gaze was steady, almost defiant. "I learned how to survive here. The planet. It teaches you things you can't learn anywhere else, and if I left, I'd be abandoning others." She didn't elaborate, but her words hinted at the presence of Deathworlders nearby. Others like her, shaped by this brutal land. Aaron's mind raced. They had come to rescue someone, but the rescue was no longer simple. Every instinct screamed that the Deathworlders wouldn't allow outsiders to interfere. The team would need more than technology or weapons. They would need cunning, adaptability, and perhaps a willingness to understand the alien version of humanity that lived here. Suddenly, a distant scream pierced the night, a sound human and yet terrifyingly alien in its intensity. The crew tensed, gripping their tools and weapons. Jara's eyes flicked toward the cliff line. "That's them," she whispered. "The Deathworlders are out tonight. They hunt anything that moves. We need to hide until we understand them." The team followed her into a narrow cavern hidden behind jagged rocks. Inside, the air was damp and heavy, but it offered some protection from the storms and the Deathworlders' watchful eyes. Aaron surveyed his crew, seeing the mix of fear and determination in their faces. They had come here to help, but the planet was making it clear that survival came first and kindness was not guaranteed. As they waited in the darkness, Aaron reflected on the signal that had brought them here. A simple SOS had promised rescue, but instead, it had delivered a test. A test of humanity against a version of humanity forged by the harshest conditions imaginable. The crew knew the days ahead would demand every ounce of skill, courage, and wisdom they possessed. The first night passed without further incident, though sleep was brief and uneasy. Every rustle of rock or gust of wind seemed to signal danger. By dawn, the plateau looked different, less like a landscape to explore and more like a battlefield to navigate. The Deathworlders were out there, observing and perhaps judging the intruders who had dared to set foot on their world. Captain Aaron gathered his team. "This isn't just about rescuing Jara anymore," he said. "We're learning how they live and how we can survive alongside them. We need to be careful, clever, and quick. One mistake here, and none of us leave this planet." Jara nodded, a glimmer of respect in her tired eyes. "I'll help you. But you must remember, they don't forgive weakness. They only respect strength." The crew prepared to step out again, ready to face the unknown. The SOS had brought them to the edge of survival, and the Deathworlders were waiting, silent, lethal, and unyielding. The first chapter of their ordeal had begun, and nothing in the galaxy could have fully prepared them for the trials ahead. In the distance, the storms roared, the cliffs shadowed unknown predators, and the planet's true nature whispered a single, chilling truth. Only the strong, smart, and adaptable could survive here, and the crew of the Aurora had just arrived in the crucible of humanity itself. The morning light crept over the jagged cliffs of Virelia 9, casting long shadows across the plateau. The wind carried a bitter tang of chemicals, and the air shimmered with heat and turbulence. Captain Aaron led his team out of the cavern, moving cautiously as Jara guided them along hidden paths she had discovered over months of survival. Every step was careful. The plateau was a labyrinth of dangerous rocks, unstable soil, and lurking predators. Jara paused beside a narrow canyon. Her eyes scanned the dark crevices and rock formations. "This is where they come from," she said in a low voice. "The Deathworlders live deeper in the canyons. They watch everything. They know when someone moves above them." Aaron nodded. and we're moving into their territory. We have to stay quiet and alert. Everyone ready? The team tightened their gear, checking sensors and weapons. Lieutenant Kara adjusted the long-range scanners to detect life signs at a distance. Halen, the team's survival expert, loaded packs with portable supplies. Each crew member understood the stakes. These were humans, yes, but humans who had become something else entirely. The first sign of the Deathworlders appeared as a shadow flickering between jagged rocks. It moved with uncanny speed, disappearing and reappearing like a predator ghost. Kara whispered, "They're fast. Faster than any human we've known." Aaron gestured for the team to freeze. They crouched, watching as several figures emerged, scanning the plateau below. The Deathworlders were tall and muscular, their bodies lean and toughened by generations of surviving the planet's harsh conditions. Their eyes were sharp, scanning the environment with constant alertness. Each movement was precise, purposeful, and silent. These were not ordinary humans. They were a species evolved for survival in extremis. Jara motioned for the team to follow her down a narrow ravine. "Keep close and don't make noise. They hunt intruders without hesitation. They won't talk. They won't warn. They kill if you make a mistake." The ravine led them to a small sheltered area near a rock overhang. Here the temperature was slightly lower, and the wind less violent. The crew could see remnants of old camps, makeshift shelters, dried food supplies, and crude tools. Jara explained that these were remnants of other colonists who had tried to settle but failed. Some didn't survive the storms, others didn't survive the Deathworlders, she said quietly. Aaron frowned. "We need more information. We can't just guess their behavior. Any contact must be calculated." Jara nodded. "I'll show you what I know. But remember, even if you understand them, that doesn't mean they'll accept you." Over the next hours, Jara led the team along hidden paths, pointing out subtle signs of the Deathworlders' presence. Footprints too large and deep for ordinary humans, hunting snares, sharpened stones used as tools and weapons, and scratch marks etched into rock walls, some simple markings, others more complex, perhaps a form of communication. The crew began to see a pattern. The Deathworlders were organized, territorial, and relentless. As the sun reached its peak, the team came upon a small clearing. From a distance, they could see a group of Deathworlders engaged in what seemed to be a hunting exercise. Using primitive yet effective weapons, they demonstrated skill, precision, and physical endurance that amazed the crew. A large predator-like creature, resembling a cross between a giant lizard and an armored mammal, was cornered and subdued with careful coordination. The Deathworlders worked together silently, communicating with subtle gestures and movements. Halen whispered, "This is incredible. They've adapted perfectly. Every movement shows efficiency and survival instinct. They're not just strong, they're smart, fast, and perfectly in tune with their environment." Aaron studied the scene carefully. "They're humans, but their humanity has been reshaped by the planet. We need to learn, observe, and respect that. One wrong move and they'll see us as prey." Jara nodded, her expression grim. "They respect strength, skill, and intelligence. Show weakness and they'll exploit it. I've survived by staying hidden and learning their ways. We have no choice but to do the same if we want to leave alive." The team spent the rest of the day observing from hidden vantage points, noting the Deathworlders' patterns. They watched as the group hunted, rested, and reinforced their territory. Every action was calculated. Every member seemed to know their role perfectly. The crew realized that force alone would not win here. They would need strategy, adaptability, and a deep understanding of the Deathworlders' code. As night fell, the plateau transformed. Shadows lengthened, the wind howled, and distant lightning illuminated the cliffs in bright flashes. Jara led the crew back to their makeshift shelter, warning them to avoid open areas. At night, they hunt even more aggressively. You can see them, but they often see you first. Despite the danger, the team took turns monitoring the perimeter, trying to piece together what they had learned. Captain Aaron reflected on their situation. The SOS that had brought them here was now only part of the challenge. The real test was navigating a world where humans had become apex survivors, and understanding that brute force or superior technology might not be enough. Midway through the night, a distant roar echoed through the canyon, a sound that was human and alien all at once. The crew froze, scanning the darkness. Jara's eyes narrowed. "That's a hunting call." They're tracking something or someone. We have to stay quiet and avoid attention. Hours passed with tense silence. Every movement, every sound seemed amplified in the cold, chemical-heavy air. The crew whispered to each other only when necessary, sharing observations and hypotheses about the Deathworlders' behavior. They noted patterns, hunting at dawn and dusk, moving silently and responding quickly to any disturbance. It was clear that survival on this planet required constant vigilance. By the next morning, the team had learned enough to plan a cautious approach toward establishing communication, or at least a controlled encounter, with the Deathworlders. Jara explained that direct confrontation would be suicidal, but subtle gestures of intelligence, coordination, and respect might earn cautious acceptance. Aaron gathered the team. We can't attack them. We can't negotiate like we would with ordinary humans. We need to show that we are competent, capable, and not a threat unless forced. We survive by proving our worth in their eyes. Kara added, we can use observation, small tools, and strategy. If we work together and think ahead, we can avoid conflict or control it if it becomes unavoidable. Jara led them to another ridge with a clearer view of the Deathworlders' territory. From there, the crew could see more signs of adaptation: fortified shelters, cleverly camouflaged paths, and evidence of resource management. It was astonishing. These humans had turned a Deathworld into a place where life could thrive, but only if you adapted fully to the planet's demands. Aaron whispered, they're a warning and a lesson. We can't underestimate them, but we can learn from them. That knowledge could save our lives and Jara's. The next few days were spent in careful observation and preparation. The crew mapped hidden paths, documented behavioral patterns, and devised small exercises to test the Deathworlders' reactions without endangering themselves. They learned to move with stealth, to anticipate environmental hazards, and to communicate silently among themselves. Jara taught them subtle signs and cues that might indicate the Deathworlders' attention or approach. On the third night, a small group of Deathworlders appeared unusually close to their hideout. The crew froze, watching in tense silence. The Deathworlders moved with perfect coordination, scanning the area, sniffing the air, and testing the terrain. For a moment, the crew felt exposed, vulnerable, and aware of the fine line between life and death in this place. But the Deathworlders did not attack. Instead, they lingered for a while, then moved on, almost as if judging the outsider's behavior. Jara exhaled quietly. They know we are here. They see us, but they don't consider us worth attacking. Yet that is respect or caution. Either way, we survive another day. Captain Aaron nodded. Every day here counts. Observation, patience, and careful action. These are our weapons. Not firepower, not technology, not force. The Deathworlders have rewritten the rules, and if we're smart, we follow them. By dawn, the team had internalized the first lessons of Viewership 9. The Deathworlders were relentless, powerful, and utterly human, but not like any humans the crew had ever known. They had adapted to survive extremes that most people could not imagine. And to live here, the crew had to adapt as well, quickly, intelligently, and without error. As the sun rose, casting jagged light across the cliffs, the Aurora crew prepared for the next stage of their mission. The SOS signal had brought them here, but understanding the Deathworlders and surviving their scrutiny was the true challenge. Every shadow, every sound, and every movement held meaning. And for the first time, the crew realized that this was not simply a rescue mission. This was a lesson in the raw power and adaptability of humanity, and the first encounter with humans who had become more than ordinary. The first chapter of survival had ended. The next would bring contact, confrontation, and the difficult realization that kindness might not exist here. But understanding, respect, and cleverness could be the difference between life and death. The sun rose slowly over Viewership 9, casting jagged light across the plateau. Captain Aaron and his crew emerged from their hidden shelter, preparing for another day of cautious exploration. The air was thick and heavy, carrying the familiar chemical tang of the planet. Even after days on this death world, the crew still felt the oppressive weight of the environment pressing on them. Every breath was a reminder that survival here was never guaranteed. Jara led the way, moving silently along paths only she knew. The terrain is unstable today, she warned. Acid rains have carved new channels in the cliffs, and some rock formations are loose. Step carefully. Halen, the team's survival expert, scanned the ground with a portable device. She's right. One wrong step and someone could fall, or worse, trigger a landslide. This planet isn't forgiving. The crew followed in silence, every sound amplified in the still morning air. Even the faintest rustle of rocks made them flinch. Jara paused at the edge of a canyon and pointed down. We have to cross here. The Deathworlders use this route too. If we move carefully, we can stay hidden and observe them. Aaron nodded. Stay alert. Watch each other's backs. We're not just dealing with environmental hazards. They're watching, waiting, and they know every movement counts. The canyon below was a narrow, twisting passage lined with jagged rocks and pools of acidic water. The walls were slick with chemical runoff and strange creatures scuttled along the edges. As the team descended, they saw signs of Deathworlder activity. Footprints pressed deeply into soft rock, sharpened sticks embedded in the ground as makeshift traps and faint markings on the cliffs, possibly a warning system or a signal to others. Kara whispered, They've adapted perfectly. Every detail of this canyon works to their advantage. It's like they own the place, and they do. Hours passed as they navigated the canyon. The crew moved carefully, mimicking the Deathworlders' silent precision. Jara pointed out the safe areas to step and the unstable spots to avoid. Even the rocks can betray you, she said. The planet itself is a weapon. One misstep, and it can kill as easily as a Deathworlder. The deeper they moved, the more intense the environmental hazards became. Acidic mist drifted from underground vents and jagged spires loomed overhead, threatening to collapse under even minor disturbances. Strange creatures, some the size of large dogs, skittered along the rocks, their eyes glowing faintly in the chemical haze. Every shadow could hide a predator. Every sound could draw unwanted attention. By mid-afternoon, the team reached a plateau overlooking a small valley. From here, they could observe without being seen. Below, a group of Deathworlders moved with silent precision, hunting and patrolling their territory. The crew watched in awe as the humans, shaped by the planet's extremes, demonstrated incredible physical prowess. They climbed cliffs without tools, leapt across wide gaps, and moved with a speed and coordination that no ordinary human could match. Halen whispered, It's incredible. They're human but evolved for survival. Every muscle, every movement, every instinct, they're designed to survive this planet. Aaron nodded, studying the scene. Force won't work here. Weapons, technology, they only matter if we understand the terrain and their abilities. We need to learn, adapt, and respect the rules of this world. Jara led the team back to a hidden cave as dusk approached. Inside, they examined the data they had collected. The Deathworlders' patterns were becoming clearer. They hunted in small, coordinated groups, avoided unnecessary risk, and seemed to communicate silently through gestures and subtle signals. The crew realized that even a minor mistake could provoke lethal consequences. Kara said quietly, They're not mindless killers. They have rules, structure, and intelligence. We can learn from them, but we have to be careful. The team spent the night reviewing strategies and planning cautious observation. They knew direct confrontation was impossible without understanding the Deathworlders' rules. Jara shared what she had learned during her months alone: how to interpret markings on rocks, how to read hunting signs, and how to predict the behavior of both the Deathworlders and the native predators. The next morning, the crew prepared for another journey, this time deeper into the canyon system. Jara explained that the terrain was changing constantly due to the planet's violent weather patterns. Landslides, acid flows, and sudden storms were unpredictable and deadly. This planet doesn't forgive mistakes, she said. You have to move as one unit, silent and precise. As they descended, a violent tremor shook the canyon. Loose rocks tumbled from above, narrowly missing Halen, who ducked instinctively. Kara's sensors detected a sudden spike in chemical activity, an underground vent releasing toxic gases. The team moved quickly, following Jara's guidance to reach a safer section. The experience reminded them that the planet itself was as dangerous as the Deathworlders. Later, they observed a small hunting party of Deathworlders corner a large predator-like creature. The humans worked in perfect coordination, using traps and strategic movement to subdue it without harming themselves. Aaron watched closely, noting how each Deathworlder moved with purpose, communicating silently and anticipating the creature's movements. These humans are apex survivors, he said quietly. They respect intelligence and skill, and they expect it in return. That's how they survive, through strategy, precision, and understanding the environment. Jara added, and they don't forgive mistakes. Show weakness and you become prey. Show skill and they observe. That's the difference between life and death here. The crew spent the next 2 days navigating the canyon, observing Deathworlder routines, and avoiding predators. They learned to move silently, recognize hidden traps, and interpret the subtle signals left by the Deathworlders. Slowly, they began to adapt to the harsh reality of the planet, understanding that survival depended on awareness, cooperation, and respect for the rules of this death world. On the third night, the crew noticed a small group of Deathworlders observing them from a distance. The humans did not approach but remained alert, watching every move. Aaron realized that they were being evaluated, their actions under scrutiny. He signaled the team to remain calm and continue their careful behavior. Any sign of panic or aggression could trigger a deadly response. Jara whispered, "They're testing you. They see your movements, your choices, your teamwork. If you fail the test, they won't hesitate. If you pass, they might respect you enough to let you live and maybe even help." The realization weighed heavily on the crew. They had come to rescue Yara, but the true challenge was surviving the Deathworlder's scrutiny while learning how to navigate a world that had turned humanity into something beyond ordinary. Every step was a lesson, every observation a key to survival. As dawn approached, a violent storm began to roll over the canyon. The wind howled and lightning illuminated the jagged cliffs. The crew huddled in their temporary shelter, the storm a reminder that Virelia 9 would not yield easily to outsiders. Even the Deathworlders respected the storm, pausing their movements and taking cover. Aaron reflected on what they had learned. Brute force, advanced weapons, and technology were secondary here. The real advantages were awareness, intelligence, and adaptability. The Deathworlders were not mindless killers. They were humans, shaped by extreme conditions, respecting skill and punishing weakness. To survive, the crew had to adopt the same principles even under threat of death. By mid-morning, the storm subsided, leaving the canyon slick with acidic runoff. The crew emerged cautiously, scanning the cliffs and the valley below. The Deathworlders were nowhere in sight, but traces of their presence were everywhere. Footprints, broken branches, and subtle markings on the rocks. The crew understood that they were being watched constantly, their every move analyzed for skill, intelligence, and resourcefulness. Aaron gathered his team. "We've seen what they can do. We've seen how they survive, and we've learned how dangerous this planet is. But we also know something important. We can survive here if we work together, stay alert, and respect the rules." "That's our advantage," Jara nodded. "You've adapted quickly. That's promising. But remember, every day will test you. Every moment could be the difference between life and death. The Deathworlders are patient. They wait for mistakes. They wait for weakness." The crew continued deeper into the canyon system, aware that every movement, every decision, and every step would be critical. They had survived the planet's first challenges, learned to observe the Deathworlders, and adapted to the hazards of Virelia 9. But they also knew the real tests were still ahead. Understanding the Deathworlders' code, interacting with them safely, and ultimately securing a path to rescue Jara and return home. By the time the sun set, casting long shadows across the jagged cliffs, the crew had learned a vital lesson. Survival on a death world required not just strength, skill, or technology. It required understanding, patience, and respect for the harsh reality that shaped those who called it home. The SOS had brought them here, but it was the planet and its humans who would teach them the true meaning of resilience. The canyon whispered with wind and distant predator cries. Shadows shifted in ways that made every crew member pause. The Deathworlders were out there, observing, judging, and waiting. And for the first time, the crew of the Aurora understood that survival would demand more than courage. It would demand intel. The morning fog clung to the jagged cliffs of Virelia 9 like a living blanket, hiding the canyon paths in a veil of gray. Captain Aaron led the crew forward, each step calculated and deliberate. The planet had already proven itself a harsh teacher, but today, the crew would learn a more immediate lesson. Danger could come not only from the environment, but from the Deathworlders themselves. Jara moved ahead, scanning the rocks and shadows with practiced eyes. "They're close," she whispered. "I can feel them. They're watching. Every move you make is noticed." Halen checked the sensors, frowning. Life signs are strong, clustered just ahead. Not wildlife. Humans. Deathworlders. Aaron signaled the team to crouch. Stay quiet. Follow Jara. If they see us too soon, we might not get another chance. The crew advanced slowly along a narrow path carved into the canyon wall. Rocks jutted out sharply, forcing them to move in single file. The air was thick with mist and a faint chemical tang, making it difficult to breathe even with their masks. Every step echoed slightly, a reminder that silence was as precious as skill in this place. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the rocks above them. The crew froze, eyes snapping upward. 3 Deathworlders appeared, descending quickly and silently from the cliffs. Their movements were fluid, controlled, and precise. It was clear that the Deathworlders had no intention of letting outsiders wander through their territory unchecked. Aaron whispered, "Hold your positions. Don't make sudden moves. Let's see what they do." The Deathworlders paused, scanning the canyon floor with sharp, calculating eyes. One of them crouched, testing the ground while the others spread out to cover different angles. The crew realized they were being evaluated, much like animals in the wild, though these humans were far more intelligent and dangerous than any predator. Jara motioned subtly for the crew to backtrack along a hidden path. They moved carefully, but the Deathworlders noticed. One of them let out a low, sharp call, almost a signal. Immediately, the team felt the tension rise as more shadows appeared along the canyon walls. They were surrounded silently with no room for error. Aaron signaled to stop. "We need to stay calm. No sudden moves. Observe and adapt." The Deathworlders advanced, their eyes never leaving the crew. Every muscle in their bodies was coiled, ready for instant action. These were humans shaped by the planet's extremes, capable of anticipating movements and exploiting weaknesses instantly. The crew realized that brute force or speed alone would not suffice. They needed strategy, coordination, and calm under pressure. Kara whispered, "They're testing us. Every move, every decision, they're watching." Jara nodded. "And they will react instantly to any mistake. That's why I survived for months. You have to prove your intelligence and coordination without showing fear." Suddenly, one of the Deathworlders lunged forward, testing the team's response. Halen moved instinctively, blocking the approach with a tactical shield. The Deathworlders' speed and strength were astonishing, but the crew's preparation and teamwork allowed them to hold their ground without causing injury. The attackers paused, circling and reassessing. Aaron realized they were not enemies yet, they were evaluators. The Deathworlders respected strength and skill even in outsiders. The crew's survival depended not on attacking or fleeing, but on demonstrating competence, coordination, and calm under pressure. Over the next hour, a tense standoff unfolded. The Deathworlders tested the team with subtle advances, feints, and movements designed to provoke mistakes. Every step the crew took, every decision they made was scrutinized. Mistakes could mean injury or worse. Yet the crew held firm, moving as a unit, responding quickly and efficiently to each test. Jara whispered, "They're impressed, quietly. But don't relax. They still control this space. Any sign of weakness now and it's over." By late afternoon, the Deathworlders slowly withdrew, moving back to higher ground where they could observe without immediate confrontation. The crew exhaled collectively, relief washing over them. They had survived their first encounter, learned the power of careful observation, and gained insight into the rules of engagement on this planet. Aaron turned to his team. "This was our first real test. We've seen their strength, intelligence, and discipline. They respect skill, not weapons. If we want to survive and complete our mission, we have to think like them, move like them, and respect their rules." Jara nodded. "You're learning. That's promising, but the danger isn't over. The Deathworlders patrol constantly, and the planet itself remains deadly. Tomorrow we push further, but cautiously. Observation, patience, and teamwork are our best tools." That night, the crew huddled in a hidden cave, reviewing the data collected during the ambush. They noted patterns, how the Deathworlders moved, how they communicated, and how they used the environment to their advantage. Every detail mattered. Even a small misstep could trigger a deadly response. Kara pointed to the sensor readings. "Notice how they use the terrain? They cover all approaches, leave no blind spots, and move silently. That's why they can survive here. That's why no outsider lasts long without learning these rules." Halen added, "And it's not just physical. They anticipate your moves, react to your decisions, and exploit hesitation. We have to think ahead at all times. Aaron nodded. Then that's what we'll do. Tomorrow we go deeper into the canyon. We observe more, learn more, and prepare for eventual contact. We survive by proving ourselves without aggression, without panic. The crew spent the rest of the night planning strategies, practicing silent movement and learning to read the subtle cues of the canyon and the Deathworlders. Even in the dark, every rustle, every shadow, every faint sign of movement became meaningful. They were no longer just rescuers. They were students of survival in a world that had rewritten the rules of human existence. The next morning brought a new challenge. The weather shifted dramatically. Strong winds, sudden acid drizzles, and loose rocks threatened to slow or end their journey. The canyon became a gauntlet of natural hazards, and the Deathworlders could appear at any moment. Every step required careful assessment. Jara led the crew along an alternative path, one she had discovered months ago, but had never needed to use in such extreme conditions. This route is dangerous, but it will take us closer to the heart of their territory without immediate confrontation, she explained. The crew moved cautiously. Acid pools bubbled along the edges of the trail, releasing toxic vapors that forced them to adjust their breathing. Jagged rocks threatened every footfall, and sudden gusts of wind made balance difficult. Yet through careful coordination and constant communication, the team navigated the path without incident. Halfway along the trail, a distant sound froze them in place, a low, deliberate call that resonated through the canyon. The Deathworlders were near, testing their presence. The crew crouched in the shadows, remaining as still as possible. For a tense minute, nothing moved. Then faint silhouettes appeared on the ridges above, Deathworlders moving silently, observing, judging. Aaron whispered, "Stay calm. Let them watch. Move only when it's safe. This is part of the test." Hours passed in tense silence. The Deathworlders remained in the distance, their presence a constant reminder of the peril of Virelia 9. By evening, the team reached a sheltered ledge where they could rest and plan the next stage. They had survived the ambush and the planet's hazards, but the lesson was clear. Any future encounter required even greater care, strategy, and understanding. That night, around a small fire, Aaron addressed the team. "Today proved something important. We survived not because of weapons or technology, but because we stayed alert, moved as a unit, and respected the rules of this world." "That's the only way to continue," Jara nodded. "You've adapted well. But tomorrow will be harder. The Deathworlders will test us again, and the planet will continue to challenge every decision we make. You must stay ready, always ready." As the firelight flickered against the rocky walls, the crew reflected on the day's events. The canyon had tested them physically and mentally, the Deathworlders had tested them strategically, and the planet had tested them environmentally. Each challenge reinforced a single truth. Survival on Virelia 9 required constant learning, adaptability, and respect for the humans who had evolved to dominate it. Captain Aaron stared into the shadows beyond the firelight. "We've survived the first real test," he thought. "But this is only the beginning. The Deathworlders are watching. The planet is watching, and if we make a mistake, we won't get a second chance." The crew slept lightly that night, every sound amplified, every shadow a potential threat. Yet even in fear, there was determination. They had faced their first ambush, learned the value of observation and coordination, and begun to understand the true meaning of life on a death world. They were not just survivors, they were students in a harsh, unforgiving classroom that demanded excellence at every turn. The first true confrontation with the Deathworlders had ended, but the lessons would last a lifetime. And for the Aurora crew, the mission had transformed from a simple rescue into a test of humanity, intelligence, and adaptability. A test that would define whether they left Virelia 9 alive or became another story lost to its jagged cliffs. The next morning, the plateau of Virelia 9 seemed even more hostile than before. Jagged rocks jutted from the ground like broken teeth, and the wind carried a sharp chemical tang that made every breath heavy. Captain Aaron gathered his crew for a briefing. "Yesterday showed us the Deathworlders' strength, skill, and strategy," he said. "Today we go deeper. We observe, learn, and adapt. Understanding their ways is our key to survival." Jara stepped forward, her eyes scanning the horizon. "We have to watch carefully. The Deathworlders respect skill, intelligence, and resourcefulness. Show weakness and they strike. Show competence and they watch. That's the difference between life and death here. The team moved cautiously along the canyon path, staying close together. Every step was deliberate, every sound minimized. The landscape was a labyrinth of cliffs, hidden crevices, and acid-slick rocks. Jara pointed out markers left by the Deathworlders, small scratches on rocks, unusual patterns of stones, and flattened areas of ground. These are signals, she explained. They mark territory, warn of dangers, or communicate movements. You have to read them carefully. As they advanced, the crew observed a small hunting party of Deathworlders below them. The humans moved with fluid coordination, climbing cliffs without tools, leaping over crevices and using subtle hand signals to communicate. One of them set a trap using only rocks and sharpened sticks. Within moments, they captured a predator-like creature, subduing it with minimal effort. Halen whispered, "Every move is calculated. Every action has a purpose. This is survival perfected." Aaron studied them carefully. Force alone won't work here. Technology helps, but only if we understand how they use the environment. We need to respect their rules and learn from them. Jara nodded. I've survived months by staying hidden, observing, and mimicking their strategies. That's how we'll navigate the canyon without getting killed. The team spent the rest of the day watching from hidden vantage points, taking notes, and learning patterns. They noted how the Deathworlders rested, how they hunted, and how they reinforced their territory. Every movement was precise, every decision purposeful. It became clear that these humans were not only physically superior, but also highly intelligent and socially organized. By evening, they returned to a hidden ledge to rest. Aaron gathered the team around a small fire. We've learned a lot today, he said. They respect intelligence, teamwork, and skill. If we want to survive, we need to demonstrate all three. That means moving carefully, communicating silently, and anticipating their reactions. Kara nodded. We also need to understand the planet itself. Every hazard, the acid vents, the unstable cliffs, the predators, is part of the Deathworlders' advantage. They use it to their benefit, and so must we if we want to survive. That night, the crew slept lightly, aware that every sound, every shadow, and every movement could reveal their position. Jara instructed them on subtle cues the Deathworlders used: the tilt of a head, the shift of weight, the pattern of footsteps. By learning to read these signs, the crew could avoid detection and gain an edge in understanding the humans who dominated this harsh world. The following morning, the team prepared for a more direct approach. Jara led them to a narrow ridge overlooking a Deathworlder settlement nestled between cliffs. The structures were simple but efficient: rock shelters reinforced with natural materials, pathways carefully designed to avoid hazards, and evidence of resource management. The Deathworlders had mastered the art of survival, turning the Deathworld into a place of controlled danger. From their vantage point, the crew observed a daily ritual. The Deathworlders gathered resources, checked traps, and communicated with subtle gestures. Even their hunting techniques were methodical, ensuring minimal waste and maximum efficiency. Halen whispered, "This is more than survival. It's a culture built around intelligence, precision, and respect for the environment." Aaron nodded. "And we need to respect that if we hope to survive. We're outsiders here. Our presence is being judged at every moment." Jara motioned for them to move closer, using hidden paths and natural cover. As they advanced, the crew noticed more signs of organization: storage areas for food and supplies, marked pathways to avoid hazards, and evidence of group coordination during hunts. Each discovery reinforced the reality that the Deathworlders were highly evolved humans, shaped by generations of extreme conditions. Suddenly, a small group of Deathworlders appeared nearby, their attention drawn to the ridge. The crew froze, hearts racing. Jara whispered, "Stay calm. Don't make sudden moves. Let's show them we're aware, capable, and not a threat." The Deathworlders watched silently, circling and scanning the area. They tested the team with subtle movements, observing reactions. The crew mirrored the calm, precise movements they had practiced, demonstrating awareness, intelligence, and coordination. Slowly, the Deathworlders seemed to accept their presence, maintaining distance but continuing to observe. Aaron whispered, "This is progress. They respect competence. Keep calm, stay alert, and continue learning." The crew spent hours observing, noting how the Deathworlders interacted, hunted, and managed their territory. They began to understand the subtle codes of behavior, the importance of skill and intelligence, and the necessity of patience. Every movement was significant, every decision mattered. They were learning the true rules of life on a death world. By evening, the team retreated to a hidden cave to rest. They discussed what they had observed, noting patterns, strategies, and behaviors. Kara summarized, "They're not just strong, they're disciplined, intelligent, and resourceful. They respect skill and they punish mistakes. That's their culture, and we have to respect it too." Halen added, "We also need to continue adapting. The planet is as much a teacher as the Deathworlders. Every hazard, every predator, every unstable rock is part of the test." Jara smiled faintly. "You've learned well. But remember, observation is only the first step. We have to apply what we've learned, carefully, to survive the challenges ahead." The next day, the crew practiced silent movement, reading subtle cues in the environment, and anticipating the Deathworlders' actions. They learned to navigate the canyon efficiently, avoid hazards, and use the terrain to their advantage. Every small success built confidence but also reminded them of the constant danger. Late in the afternoon, a sudden tremor shook the canyon. Loose rocks tumbled and a predator-like creature scuttled from the shadows, narrowly missing the team. The Deathworlders emerged from hidden paths, coordinating a response to the disturbance. The crew observed their efficiency, understanding that survival required constant awareness, teamwork, and strategic action. Aaron addressed the team. "Today reminded us that the planet and its inhabitants are a single, coordinated system. To survive, we must adapt to both. That means observing, planning, and acting with intelligence and skill." By evening, the team reached a plateau overlooking a larger area of Deathworlder territory. They could see signs of daily life, shelters, hunting grounds, and patrol routes. The humans were clearly adapted to the environment, moving with grace and precision. The crew realized that to succeed, they needed to integrate observation, intelligence, and physical skill. Jara whispered, "They respect those who can match them in skill and awareness. Show them competence and you gain some measure of safety. Show them weakness and it's fatal. That is their code, and it is unchanging." The crew prepared for the night, reflecting on the lessons learned, the importance of observation, the value of skill, and the need for constant awareness. They understood that surviving on Virelia 9 required more than courage. It required intelligence, adaptability, and respect for the Deathworlders' unique culture. Captain Aaron looked out over the jagged cliffs as the sun set. "We've learned much, but the journey is just beginning. Every step forward will demand skill, patience, and understanding. If we can master these lessons, we might survive and complete our mission. If not, the planet will take what it must." As darkness fell, the crew settled into their hidden shelter. Outside, the wind whispered through the cliffs, carrying the distant sounds of predators and Deathworlders alike. Every shadow, every movement, every sound was a reminder that survival depended on vigilance, skill, and the ability to learn quickly. The 5th chapter of their journey had taught them the true value of observation, intelligence, and adaptability. The Deathworlders' culture was not one of mindless aggression, but of skill, discipline, and resourcefulness. To survive, the crew needed to honor these principles, moving carefully, thinking ahead, and respecting the harsh reality of a world that had transformed humans into apex survivors. For the Aurora crew, the SOS had been only the beginning. The real challenge was understanding the Deathworlders, navigating the planet's deadly hazards, and proving themselves capable in a world where survival was earned, not given. And with each day they came closer to mastering the lessons of Virelia 9, lessons that would determine whether they left alive or became another story swallowed by the Deathworld.